Hello. Hi. Good. Well, how is everything going for you? It's good? Yay! Yay! I love that guy. I pay him every time. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Firebase, which is a little bit out of my depth. I usually do other topics, but I'm exploring Firebase now with my tentacles. I'm going into Firebase. So you can also do. Maybe after this talk, you will be interested about what Firebase is doing. So I think it's a quite interesting talk for you. So what's new in Firebase? Well, Firebase has changed a lot in the last 2 years. And maybe you know something, or maybe you heard something about Firebase, but today you will have like an up-to-date view. So let's first start with my intro. Okay. Yes. So I'm a Google Developer Expert, which is a title that Google gives to the most active members of the community. And in my case, I'm part of the web technologies group. And I go to a lot of conferences, I write blog posts, and I have lots of fun, as you can see. I'm also an international speaker. These are the talks I've done in the last 2 years when I decided to go full-time. And you can see there's a lot of talks going on in Europe. This year, I started to do talks in the US. And there's some other interesting bits. The ones in green are the ones I'm going to do before the end of the year. So there's one in Moscow, and the other one is in Reykjavik in Iceland. So I'm quite excited about these 2 trips. I'm also a blogger, and I usually publish my blogs on these Google Developers Experts publications in Medium. And just a few months ago, I got the 3 top blog posts in that publication, so I was really excited. And you can see that I'm quite active on blog posts as well. In London, I run 2 communities. One is Angular Zone, the other one is GraphQL London. So if you want to see what we are doing, you can catch up online. We record all the meetings, and these are quite cool communities to attend to. Just this year, I've been running also some host gigs. So I go to some conferences, and I'm the master of ceremonies, like you are today. And I usually play with the audience, like do some crazy things, make them do some crazy things. Today I'm not going to try anything of that, but just so you know. So why I'm talking about what's new in Firebase? Well, the main reason is because there was the Firebase Dev Summit just a few days ago. It was celebrating the new updates on the platform. And this happened in Amsterdam, and I have this video I want to show you. So let's see, just for a moment.
That's a wrap for the Firebase Summit. It's a little bit emptier than it has been the last day or so.
Oh, but there was actually an event going on, right?
Yeah, it was kind of the reason we were here. This beautiful venue. We launched some stuff.
We did. We launched predictions. I predict that's going to be a big hit.
A/B testing for a remote config, so you
Yeah.
can figure out what you want your app to be like.
Super excited about Crashlytics too. I'm so glad that's ready.
And that was so cool.
Todd did a talk on analytics with BigQuery.
We had the cloud functions, like writing great code and getting those to scale from Thomas and Lauren. We had the Flutter team here, we had the Fabric team here, we had the Firebase team here. It was just this great amount of talks that we got to listen to.
And we gave a talk too.
Did we? Yeah, the 0 to F. There were so many talks, so many great presenters. The only thing I enjoyed more than watching the talks was talking to everyone who came.
I loved the Ask Firebase Lounge. It's so great seeing what people are building, answering their questions. I always end up learning so much more.
There were some great code labs going on where people got to do this like hands-on training while the engineers were sitting there helping them. And then after we talk to them, we do all this business, we get to hear what they're doing, we got to go party with them.
They had a DJ.
Yep, I don't know, it made me dance.
do it again next year.
Okay, it's great. I don't have to present.
Do it for the sheep.
Whoop.
And
Wait.
Oh, the sheep. Oh my God. I love sheep. There it is.
Oh. Okay, we are safe now. So, few announcements in Firebase, and a lot of new products were announced. Probably the most exciting is predictions, and I'm going to cover all of these different services in this talk. So let's start by covering all of the services that are available in Firebase, and there are plenty of them. Today, you can count 19 different services. So let's see these services. I mean, these are based on development and test, and probably you can recognize some of them. The ones I'm going to cover will be Crashlytics, and then this is another section. And for this one, I'm going to cover the new dashboard with analytics. Then we will see the new cloud messaging, remote config, and also AV tests, which is quite cool. And then we will end with probably the most exciting one, which is predictions, which is machine learning. So as you can see, there are a lot of services. There's no time to cover all of them. And we will just cover the ones that were changing on Dev Summit. There was also this announcement, which was quite surprising because I'm not so familiar with Firebase technologies, and is the amount of developers they already have. Like, what would be your guess on how many developers they have? I mean, you probably will be wrong, because today they have more than 1 million Firebase developers, which is quite a lot of people. So let's start with the first announcement, and this was the announcement of the new console. And the new console has been going through different changes. A lot of them are based from the Fabric team. So Google acquired Fabric early this year, and they have been working together to introduce changes and all the knowledge and expertise that Fabric has today. So let's see the first. Sorry. So the first one is the new design. So that's the dashboard that we get when we go to the Firebase Console. And we can see that there's a new organization on the menus. This is also because we have so many options, and they have been regrouped. And I'm going to show you how that looks today. I created this small video. So you can see on the top, we have the project. And then from there, we have the different actions that we can take for different teams, probably. You will have different teams focus on on those features. And that will help to find what you want to achieve. So basically, that's a small change. The first thing that you will see when you open this new console is the project home. And there are a few key metrics that you can see from this initial page. The first one, it's pointing you to these, let me check it, these daily active users, and we can also see the trend for monthly progress. Then there's also the important information of how many crash has been going through on a daily and monthly basis. So this is the first view we have once we get into the console, which is pretty cool. One addition that comes from the Fabric team is the view from the latest release. So every time that we release a new version of our app, we can see how it's going. And one of the main information will be the adoption rate. And there's also this new card, which is the live information. So you can see actually what the users are doing at that very moment. And for each release, we also get some extra information, which you can see here at the bottom. And that will point you to a specific version of your app. And then for this, each release, you will see the number of active users, you will see the engagement, how people is enjoying this new version, and then we also get the information about the crashes. So you can also see the stability of the new version. Maybe you want to decide to roll it back. So that's also cool. A new change that we can see is on the dashboard, and this is the analytics bit. And we have this new car structure. We have all the information that's been tracking our app in different key performance indicators. You have this view. We also, again, have the live usage, so we can see how the users are interacting. And then we also have this information, which is usually responding a question. So it's much easier for new members on our team to see what's going on. Probably the most interesting is the new live data information. And you can see this map where the users are using our application, and we can see different aspects of it. If we have time, I'm going to show it live. Probably you cannot see that's North America. And then that information is shown by different devices, different versions, and all the common data that you want usually on this kind of dashboard. So that's the first section, the new console and the new design. And probably you recognize some of these changes immediately. And the next thing I want to cover is Crashlytics. So Crashlytics is the new addition due to the integration from the Fabric team. And they have brought all their knowledge and expertise, and some of the main dashboards are coming from their tool. You can see this guy trying to catch the different bugs. And this is mostly what happens when we release a new version. We just want to know if something is not working for a specific device. We want to catch that as soon as possible. And we will see that we have some tools, new tools, as notifications that will alert us very quickly when that happens. So we have the announcement of the beta release of this Crashlytics. I'm going to share a link so you can opt in to this version of the console. And the most important thing is probably the real-time crashing tool. So as your application receives or gets in trouble, you will be able to follow and see what you can do with it. The main thing that it allows us is to track and prioritize the different bugs in a way that it's really easy. So let's see the dashboard for Crashlytics. So what will Crashlytics do is we'll group these different issues that our application is under threat, and it will just stack the same issues by looking at the stack trace. So it's doing some smart grouping, so you don't have to go through a long list of bugs. There's also some interesting tags that it adds to these bugs, so you can decide if you want to take action in a specific version of the product or target some specific device. And these are called significance batches. And these are created automatically for you, so you don't have to look into those issues trying to figure out this information. So we can see we can see here, maybe it's not so clear, it's a little bit too bright, but these are the information going through crash-free instances. So we can see that the application is mainly working for our users, and they haven't experienced any issue so far. Then the next one is all of the different events that are happening. So that's also quite interesting. That's obviously looking at the issues, and we can see some crashes there. There's also some non-fatal errors, and also all of the users that have been affected by those. And the numbers is not so clear here on the screenshot, but these are numbers on 10,000 executions, so it's quite low. We only have 400 issues for this example. Then at the bottom, we have actually the information about these issues, and it's pointing to the line of the code and also giving some extra info. So let's look into that. One of the things that Crashlytics can do for us is add this, what it's called custom keys. And it's not really good. You cannot see the information in there, but these are some keys that we can define in our application and gather that information when the crash happens. So we can then see if, for example, the user has, if it's a game, we can see, for example, the level at the game that the user was when this error happened. Or we can also see, for example, what's the size of the device, of the screen of the device, some other information on the actual state. And that's quite interesting. We can also maybe gather the custom settings that the user has set up on his device or her device. And that information will be key to target the solution, to implement a solution for that issue. There's also some other information, and these are coming from the logs. And we can see that section there for the keys. For the logs, it's all of the actions that the user was taking, so it gives you more context on what was happening before the issue maybe crashed the application. And then we can see some extra information on the actual action that was being taken at the moment of the crash. And this information, both the keys and the logs, they will be added to this panel for us. So that's quite interesting. We can see here at the bottom, is not so clear. Sorry for that. Another interesting feature that we get is the real-time alerts. And this is what I was explaining before. One of the benefits is the moment we get in trouble, we can get these notifications that will just tell us that something is going, something unexpected happened. So this, for example, is pointing to a new issue, and it's also giving you some key information on what file was involved. That's a regression issue, also showing you the version of the app, so that's also interesting. And maybe sometimes it's a fatal error. Maybe the user is not able to use the application anymore, and that's coming in a different format. So that's going to be delivered in real time as it happens. So you don't have to be following, the dashboard all the time. So that's now something that you can use. Another interesting option is using automation. And if you are familiar with Cloud Function, this is Crashlytics, and that's Cloud Functions, is that we can now, from an issue, we can initiate any process that can be run on a Cloud Function. So that means that we can send, for example, an email, we can initiate some process that we have automated in our team. We can also maybe send a message to a Slack channel so everyone on the team is aware. So this is also quite powerful. So that will make the second section of these new features. The next one I want to cover is cloud messaging. And this is a quite impressive feature that they have implemented in the new version of Firebase. So let's see how this works. So this is actually a free service that we can use to deliver messages to all of these devices in different platforms, and that we can set up, and they will all get that information. So you can see here a small diagram of that working. One interesting thing that we can do is not only send this to every device, but we can target, and from these images I want to point you that we can target individual devices, we can also target groups, or even topics that we can define. So how this works? Well, the first thing that we need to do is subscribe to the Firebase Cloud Messaging. And each device will subscribe to that channel of messages. And once we have that done, we can then program targeting these different options. And then the platform will just make sure that every device that was under those criteria will be delivered a message. But that's probably not the most impressive. The most impressive is the amount of messages that we can deliver. So here in this little animation, I can show you that we can send like a humongous amount of messages, and in a really short amount of time. I mean, if you are thinking of what you can do with this, is amazing. And remember that this is for free as well. That covers all of the common devices, so we have Android, iOS, and web. And we can not only send this amount of messages to all of these devices, but we can also customize what information receive. So we can improve the experience for different devices. Another interesting option is that we can run a specific A/B test on this based on that information. So for example, we can use a group, or we can use a topic defined on this Firebase Cloud Messaging, and try different formats for that specific notification and see which one is more successful. Let's cover another new update. And this is pointed to the remote config. So what is the remote config? The remote config is where we can define some parameters that we hold not on the devices, but on our servers. And then we can define these parameters and target different features on our app. So then we can customize those features and give a different experience. So the first thing that we can do is, for example, customize the experience on different seasons. It can be, for example, on a daily basis, it can be on a weekly basis, and then we can change the experience from the users given those times. So for example, we can start sales, we can start specific deals. So that's some new features that we can access with this remote config. Another thing we can do is target the specific audiences. So depending on the country, for example, and the platform, we can also give a different experience. One thing that the Firebase team announced is the new framework for A/B tests. And we can see that in this slide. So what we do when we run this A/B test is we will find what the configuration, what these parameters had more success. So what we will do is pick two groups, use one as a reference and another one to introduce a new variation. And then over time we will track the performance so we can decide which option we want to go for. This is called, for this new release, is called experiments. So experiments will be giving you all these different features. Let's see how we can set these experiments. So the first step is setting what is called the experiment basis. So that's just giving it a name, and a description. And from this point, we will just target the experiment that we will run for a specific set of applications and devices. From this, we will pick how many of them we want to affect. Obviously, when you want to try these different variations, you don't want to affect all of the users. You will just target a small amount. That's also why it's called experiment, not releasing a new feature. So you just try that experiment, and then if it's successful, then you want to apply it to the whole user base. On the second step, we will define what is called variants. And obviously, we can start with just one, and that will be introducing this new effect. The way we do that is introducing these parameters. And these are coming from this remote config that we were talking before. In this case, I have these two parameters. One is the text that you can see when you sign in. The other one is the color that I'm using in a specific section of the app. And then I want to see how this new message and the color is affecting the usage and the retention for the app. So then I will create these variants and then see how this affects, how the users engage maybe more or less with the application. The last step is setting the goal. You need to set a goal so you can see that there's an improvement on the behavior. So here we are looking into the signs-ins. So we are looking into how many users decided to sign in our app. And then we can also set some other information that will give us some extra context to this data. Here we have engagement, retention, and cache-free users. So we can see the readings of these different metrics while we are looking at the goal, how many of these people in the experiment did finally sign in. If we look at the panel that we will be evaluating the experiment, it looks something like this. Unfortunately, we cannot see the figures there. But more or less, I can explain it. So we have in this experiment, we have only one variation. And for that variation, we are looking at the retention and some other metrics. And that's going to give us enough information to decide if we want to apply that to the final release, so it will be affecting all of the users. So that's also a new addition. If we look at the data there, at the top we have the improvements, so we can see if there are improvements or not. And then for the first metric, we can see how is that evolving with the different information we pick from the context information. So here we have how many will be improving the group control, and also how many improve the retention rate, and how many users actually sign in on that previous example. Another interesting thing that we can do with this A/B test is use those for notifications. So while we are using the Firebase Cloud Messages, we can also run A/B tests, which is also quite interesting. So we can customize the messages that we are using. We can customize the content that is getting into these notifications. That's also in the new release. Finally, what we have is predictions, and this is probably the most interesting one. And I'm going to explain a little bit how that is working. So Google, as you may have seen, has been investing in machine learning for the last few years and applying some of this machine learning to different products. So in this new release of Firebase, they are giving you access to that knowledge. And you can use it in the different services from Firebase, which is quite powerful. One thing that predictions can do is find different groups in a way that they can then be used for different sections of Firebase. So these are some dynamic groups that will tell you how are the chances for that specific group to leave or stop using the application? How many of these dynamic groups will be likely to spend money in an app-in purchase, and how many of them will not spend money on it? So we can then use these groups, which were generated by predictions, to initiate some actions. And let's see how that works with a little bit more detail. So what we will start using is all the behaviors and all the different actions that the users are taking while using our apps. We will just gather that information and give it to predictions. What we want to do is be able to know when we detect some pattern that will mean that the user is disengaging with the application or is not going to actually remove the application from the usage. So what we are trying to do is also trying to guess, not for the people that is going to stop using the application, but actually the active users, if they are going to be doing purchases. So in this example, you want actually to be able to find which ones are not going to buy or which ones are going to buy. So that could be really useful. And the way we are using that information coming from predictions is that we will change the experience for the users in those groups. So if, for example, there's a user that is behaving in a way that it's probably going to remove the app, we are going to engage him, giving some discounts, or just trying to get him back to the regular user. And that will also bring, if we look at the groups from people that it's engaged and that probably will make a purchase, you can also increase the performance of your, the profits of your app, which is also cool. The way predictions works is it creates these models, and then it changes these models depending on the success. So you need to give predictions some time, but you can start using these groups in your different sections of Firebase. And this will work for analytics, this will work also for A/B testing and notifications. So what is what we achieve with predictions? What we can do is customize the experience of the user. So if we find out by using analytics, we find out that there are some users which are not happy and they are mostly likely to remove the application, what we can do then is give them some extra. So for example, if it's a game, we will just give them more lives. So then they are more likely to keep using the app. But we are doing this automatically. So we are just using these different groups that predictions create for us, and we're just telling Firebase how to behave. The same can be done with notifications. So if we detect some of these users, this group of users which are not so happy, we can send them some discount and just convert them to a happy user. That's pretty awesome. So basically what we are doing is increasing the chances of engagement with them. And if we give them some rewards, they will be more likely also to do in-app purchases. The next thing is we can also create custom predictions. So we have these default groups, which are these three groups that we define, the ones that are going to leave the application, the ones that are more likely to make an in-app purchase, and the ones that are not interested on that. We can also create other groups based on some custom predictions that we can build. And that's probably the most interesting. We can then use that information to run specific actions that will target more or less, risky groups. So we cannot just target the group that it's maybe going to remove the application, but also take some other users that will also, make them happier while they are using the app. So, well, that was more or less all. You can try all of these features and Crashlytics by using this URL. And I'm going to show you a small demo so you can see how that looks. There's also these code labs. I'm going to share the slides so you can check them later. But let me just show you in a moment how that looks. So this is if you want to use any of these features, there are some demo projects that you can use. And the only thing you have to do is go to your console, and once you need to follow the link, they will send you an activation, so it will take a few minutes. Once you have the activation, then you can, from this welcome page, you need to go to this Explore a Demo Project. And that's the quickest way to test those. And then from here, you can see all of the different features I showed you before. So this is, for example, the project view. And then you can navigate to analytics. What we also saw is probably the most cool is this stream view. And that's giving you the live data from the usage of the different users. And we can navigate that information. For example, pick one random user. That's also quite cool. From all of the users using your app, you can pick one and see how they are interacting. And you can see the timeline. See if they are happy. For example, this is a Samsung in Atlanta, and we can also move to another user, maybe one that is active now. Well, this information is coming from a game, which is called Flooded, but you can play with it a little bit more later. What else I can show you? Probably the predictions. So you can see 37% of the users may be in a phase where they will remove the application. And then over here is the retention. So these are the users that will keep using. This is for this game. So well, that was pretty much all. Hope you have enjoyed this overall overview of these DevFest announcements. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can come to me. I'll stick around. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for hearing me.